Welcome to Fitness and Thinking, a podcast centered on 6 pillars of wellness. We have the physical, mental, social, emotional, spiritual, and financial state of being. And with Ina La Bellina on Instagram, we have spoken on all things DJing, I would say, and managing passion alongside full-time work and the importance of doing both, necessarily taking time away from the thing you love in order to enjoy the thing you love more, almost. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah. A lot of our talk was also just around channeling your energy into the things that make you feel good, and the balance of it all, really. Yeah.
We also tackle some misconceptions. I think there was a really nice bit around your collective Lawaai and the work you do with FLINTA artists and trying to improve access to DJing and to nights for maybe artists who are underrepresented or don't necessarily see themselves represented in lineups or in booking agents or in promoters or nightclub owners. And I think the work you're doing there is really important. And it sounds like you're doing the work and you're the guide that you wish you had when you started, almost.
We also just talked quite a lot about like very music specific things, but yeah, that's a bit hard to sort of foreshadow, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate you allowing me to geek out a little bit with some of that.
Yeah, I loved it. It's really fun.
If you like this episode, make sure to drop it a like wherever you listen to it. Make sure to comment and share as well. All of this only grows as you do all of these little actions that add up over time. All right, let's get into it. Let's get. What is the most common misconception you face as a DJ?
I think one thing that I always think about is that everyone thinks it's like a very cool thing to do. And everyone's like, when you get introduced to friends at a party, they always start by saying, "This is Ina, she's DJ." And then everyone has like loads of questions about that. And I think the questions bit is fair enough. Like probably for a lot of people, they don't really know how that like works on a day-to-day basis, or they're like curious to see the other side and not the side that they know, which is like going to a party and just being a person on the dance floor. Mm-hmm. But I think it's good to demystify that DJs are also just people and you don't have to put them on a pedestal. And then I guess, the second one is that maybe more for the older generation. My parents have sometimes made comments about this as well. They don't really take it so seriously as a job or a responsibility. And they're like, yeah, you're just doing your funny music thing. And there isn't so much, like if you want to do a good job, there's so much preparation and sort of thinking that goes into preparing for a set. And then also when you're in the moment, you're not just playing like your favorite songs, but you're also really trying to tune into the energy of the people on the dance floor, trying to figure out what mood everyone is in. Of course, you can sort of, if you read the room, you know what people are responding to well at the moment. But then it's also kind of nice to anticipate a bit where they might want to go next, or what kind of mood or energy could like take that whole experience to a different level. And I think that's maybe the part that people don't really see or think about, especially nowadays with social media where everyone's DJ and it's like very cool for people to like upload videos of themselves partying, but the partying is not really the bigger picture of it, I think.
What does that feel like? Does it feel like a pressure to you to be that person?
I think there is definitely a little bit of pressure there, or maybe you could say more that it's like a welcome challenge, because I think that can be really fun. Of course, sometimes you step into a dance floor and you have a super receptive crowd and everyone's just kind of up for anything, and like they just want to dance and have a good time with their friends, and they're just sort of go along with whatever you throw their way. And that's kind of the moments where you can be a bit more daring and adventurous yourself and just kind of go nuts. But then, you definitely also sometimes have scenarios where maybe the demographics of the people in the club are a little bit different, or, it's a more commercial place. And then you have 8 people coming up to you in one night asking if you can play some ABBA, which happened to me a lot of times. And then it's sort of like this challenge of, okay, I know that they maybe came here tonight with a slightly different expectation, which I'm not going to go down that route completely, but maybe what is inside my own like arsenal of sound that can sort of like still give them that feeling that they're looking for, and like still create that atmosphere that they're looking for, while also staying true to my own sound and just, you know, myself and what I want to do. So that's, I think, a nice challenge. Sometimes you are just going to lose people. I've had this before where I've played a set and then you know, you're thinking like, wow, this is really going well, everyone's loving it, and then all of a sudden you know, there's just like one big friend group that's maybe like at the front of the audience, and then yeah, people just want to go for a cigarette break, or someone says, hey, let's check out the other room, and then all of a sudden like 8 people leave, and then you feel like, whoa, okay, what did I do wrong? You know, if this happens with like 2 groups of people, and then you can sort of question yourself pretty quickly. But then it's also important to remember, like, people do need breaks. And when I'm on a night out, I also sometimes, even if I'm loving the music, just want to go exploring. And yeah, so I think it's kind of, if you stay true to yourself, then don't take those things too personally. Yeah, the one thing that I think does feel like pressure is sometimes this expectation of okay, if we put this DJ on the lineup, they're going to bring X amount of people in. And I've also seen this from the other side of like putting on my own nights or organizing parties with friends. You really cannot rely on that. You can book a DJ that's like very hyped up in your city, where you think, okay, everyone loves this person, they always like absolutely smash it at festivals and other events, we're going to book them, it's going to be a sold out night. And sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it can just be the fact that it's raining, or that people went on a big night the weekend before, or the night before, or there's maybe something else going on. So I think that's also good to acknowledge, that you can't really put that responsibility necessarily on the DJ to just magically draw a big crowd all the time, especially if they're playing regularly.
For sure. And obviously with external circumstances, that's something maybe to reflect on personally, just that you can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you react to what happens. So say you have one of those nights where maybe people don't show up, or it's raining, or as you say, your friendship groups go out of the room and suddenly it feels like you've got this big void to fill. So you're still in the room, you're still going no matter what. To your mind, what is it, maybe when is it in the set that you know that things are falling apart?
Oh yeah, difficult. I think I have a very expressive face. So for example, like when my really close friends or my boyfriend are in the audience, and then they can see straight away in my face if like I'm not happy with something that's happened, and I would still smile, or like try to smile, but they can see straight through it and see like, okay, that's not a real happy Ina right now. I think if it is like a case of there's not that many people there, or the vibe is not quite where you thought it would be at that moment, it's sort of, this is so easy to say and hard to do. So I'm not saying that I have mastered this at all myself, but super important not to feel disheartened or disappointed, because then that's kind of like a negative energy. And I find those are always way more distracting to the brain. So that can like occupy a lot of space in your head then, and leave less space for you to think about, okay, what can I do to still feel good, or to make it better? And yeah, what I would usually try to do is maybe, you know, let's say you prepared like quite an upbeat, a more like a high energy set, because you envision people like just dancing and going crazy, and then it's a bit dead, or the sort of energy still building up. Maybe just switching to something a little bit slower, and or not necessarily slower, but like a different kind of energy. So maybe like I would flip over to playing like dubstep, for example, because that has like still a lot of energy and a lot of power, but it's not the kind of music where people would be like going crazy. So then for the people who are there, with maybe a little bit more space around them on the dance floor, that's kind of like a nice vibe to like still have the energy sort of coming through the music towards the audience, but not in this feeling where you're sort of expected to dance and go crazy. Because if you overdo it and you have less people and low energy, and then you think, I'm just gonna like blast it out and like hope that it sort of pulls everyone along, like that can really backfire. And then if it's kind of too much of what people are willing to give themselves in terms of energy that in that moment, they will probably leave, and then you're clearing the room. The most important thing is you just need to keep going, and you can't just be like, well, now I've screwed it up and everything's ruined. Things will always go wrong. It can be like so common to have kind of technical difficulties on the decks as well. I had it once where I was playing somewhere, and if you have like multiple decks, then usually link them so that you can put your USB stick into one of them, but then you can also get the playlist up on the other decks because they're linked. Mm-hmm. And then while I was playing, all of the decks just unlinked themselves because I guess like somewhere the cables must have gone loose or something, but it was also unlinked on the deck that I was playing on. So this track went into emergency loop, and then I couldn't even open a new track on any of the other decks because there was just this huge like error message pop-up thing that was almost covering the whole screen, and I couldn't get it to go away. But I couldn't see what the songs in the playlist were underneath. So I was really stressing out, and like I had to like usher some people from the venue into the booth to be like, you have to help me fix it. But then there was 3 men like crawling around on the floor underneath me trying to like find the cables, and it was so stressful. And this was like in the first hour of a 3-hour opening set at probably one of the biggest bookings I ever had. Like 2 or 3 of my absolute all-time favorite DJs were on the lineup after me, and that was just the one time where I really, really wanted it to go well, and then this happened, which was completely out of my control. But then I just kind of realized, okay, this already happened. The recording of this set is going to sound horrible, but I'm just going to wait for a sec, endure this loop, and then once they had sort of figured it out, I could just go back in. But I definitely felt sort of a bit like this sort of sinking feeling in my stomach, and then you just have to pull yourself out of it again.
Like, it already sounds like it was stressful and that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. But after the fact, like, did you get to talk to the other people on the bill? Did you get to reflect on it with them since the event? Have you reflected on it? How does it feel now?
Yeah, well, so luckily they weren't there yet because it was like at the beginning of the party. And I don't know if people who aren't DJs know this, but like it's quite common that at the start of the night, maybe you're just there by yourself as the opening DJ, especially if it's like a few hours until the next people play. And nice DJs who also care about like getting to know the scene and the other artists, and they have time, they might come earlier just to check it out and support and see what's going on. Also then helps them inform what they're going to play later if they understand a bit of the flow of the night and what kind of things people are resonating well with or not. But in this case, it was a super long day and night party, and I was the first one up. So luckily my idols weren't there to witness this. And yeah, I mean, I spoke with the people from the venue about it afterwards to let them know that they need to like check these things. But I think aside from that, there's also not much you can do. And I think over apologizing or over explaining things also isn't really helpful, because if you've done it long enough, you know that these things will just happen. And I also would never, if I go to see someone play and you can sort of tell that they're struggling a bit with the experiment and maybe a few blends are like not super smooth, I would never go away from that being like, oh, they're a bit like meh or something. You would just think, okay, maybe it was just unlucky coincidence, maybe they're having a bad day. But like if the track selection is good and everything, that doesn't really impact how you think of someone, I think. Hopefully others think that way too.
I can imagine that's a fairly fair way to go about it. I wouldn't imagine that people go into it thinking that they're going to be so judgmental, because then they're going to be held up to the same standards, you'd imagine. And that sounds like a terrible thing, to be over scrutinized for something that should be fun and inclusive and bring people together,
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that everyone started somewhere, and if it's let's say like a more well-known DJ, but they're still as a person very down to earth and like not like on like a crazy ego trip or something, they'll also remember how it was, and they can often actually be the most comforting people. So I've also had this sometimes where I went away from a set and for whatever reasons, didn't really feel like it was my best, or I was really bummed out about something that went wrong. And then sometimes had the chance to like talk to someone else about that backstage, also maybe kind of to get their like advice or something. And then every time they're just like super comforting, like telling you, don't worry. And then they'll often like throw in an anecdote from their own experience of like when they like really messed something up or when everything went wrong. And yeah, you just have to sort of laugh about it and move on.
I imagine the green room could be like a great place to hang out and to hear those stories, to feel community. What though, was your start? How did you get into it? How did you find the community that you've got now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back quite a long time to when I was studying at Sheffield University, where we also met. And I was always doing media because I studied journalism. So I was doing the student newspaper. But then in the media hub where we were working, they also had a radio station. And so while I was at uni, I started doing a radio show. And then after university, when I lived in Manchester, I was like a studio volunteer at Reform Radio, which is like a pretty big community-run radio station in Manchester. And I'm still a resident there now, 5 years later. But this was quite a long time ago. I was just volunteering there, and I always really thought that like radio and DJing were quite different, because in like a traditional radio studio, you wouldn't necessarily have to mix in the tracks. Like you could just play a song and then you would maybe like whack on the jingle, or you could just let songs fade out and sort of talk over it a bit. So I was always doing that and really loving it, and never really thought about DJing or that was like something I would do. And then in lockdown, when I was already living here in Amsterdam, at that point I hadn't really done radio for a while, just because I'd moved here and not really found the right place or opportunity to do that. But then I did a show in lockdown every Friday from 6 till 8. So that was 2 hours per week every Friday. And it was sort of like kind of to celebrate like the end of the work week and get people excited for the weekend. And because it was lockdown, so many of my friends tuned in, and the show ended up having like quite a lot of listeners every week. So that was something that also really helped me through the lockdown, and like this feeling of like living by myself and being quite isolated in that moment. It really gave me like so much positive energy and motivation. And that's when I really realized how important music was to me and how happy it makes me. And that was kind of the point when so many people who were listening to the radio show started saying, hey, do you also DJ? Or I feel like you should DJ, like you'd be really good at it based on how you sort of build up a flow of energy and emotions in your radio shows. And it was really just this thing that like people had said it so often that at one point I was like, maybe I should DJ. And then I did some lessons. So I learned to DJ on vinyl, and I did some lessons in a record shop here in Amsterdam. And then just, a lot of practicing at home. And then when the lockdown was finally over, I started just going around bars in Amsterdam, like begging them to let me play in the bar, and like playing house parties for friends, organizing my own nights. And then it sort of, kind of grew slow and steadily from there.
Did you know that each episode of Fitness and Thinking takes about 10 hours to put together? If you've enjoyed them, then I've got a favour to ask of you. It's not your money. It is just a second to like what you like. Maybe a couple of seconds to leave a comment on what you enjoyed, what you changed, what you might have asked the guests, and maybe to ask me to bring on somebody or to discuss a topic that you're interested in. Like you found this thing that made sense to you, that you could grow, that you could develop, that you enjoyed, it brought joy to other people. You've got Osaka in the background, did you say?
Kyoto.
Kyoto in the background. And the concept of ikigai, do you know this?
Yes, yeah.
That it ticks all of these boxes of purpose. And it sounds like you found that for you. But then a way that you've tied it in from what I've seen online is that you have Lawaai Collective.
Yeah. What we try to do with Lawaai, my DJ collective, is kind of level the playing field a little bit for women and non-binary and trans artists to kind of just be a bit more represented in the music industry, in terms of DJs on lineups, but also producers. If you look at the statistics concerning like clubs anywhere in the world, but especially festivals, FLINTA artists are super underrepresented still today. So that was kind of the goal of the collective, to try and change that by just organizing our own events and sort of these dedicated radio broadcasts where we just give a platform to up and coming new artists and sort of try and give them a push a bit.
When I look across at coaches in whatever discipline, it sounds like this collective could have been something that you might have enjoyed when you started out, for instance, that we often end up becoming the people that we wish we had in our lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. The reason that I sort of started the collective with my friends was also really just that I met my friends Lan and Lainey very shortly after I started DJing, and they had also both more or less recently started DJing themselves. And we had just by like meeting for the first time and just having like a little bit of a chat, you immediately notice that you're struggling with the same things, whether it's kind of internal like imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, to more external things like all of the bars are run by men, all of the venues are run by men, events are usually organized and promoted by men, bookers are men, most of the other DJs you see are men. So that can be a really intimidating space to go into. And we kind of bonded over that and realized that when you sort of unite together, in our case, in this collective, it just makes it less scary. So it was kind of born a bit out of necessity for ourselves. And then as we kind of, started doing it for a while, then you in yourself become more confident and you notice like, I'm not so worried anymore about playing on a lineup where there's maybe only men, and I'm not scared to go and pitch myself to this promoter, or I'm not scared to speak up in a venue if something's making me feel uncomfortable. So that was then also kind of the point where we realized that we can just immediately go out and share that with other people and sort of try and hopefully make them struggle with these things a bit less by giving support and sharing experiences. So that was definitely something that started because we really needed it, and then we realized that you can help so many other people with it as well. And it was a bit the same with when I started teaching and giving DJ lessons. I just really think it would have been so cool when I was kind of thinking about starting to DJ if there had been like women out there or organizations out there that were offering workshops or courses specifically tailored for women and non-binary artists, just to create a bit more of this safe space. And that's also why I think I enjoy doing it so much now.
What do you think, Ina, is the reason, or what are the reasons for the difficulties that you've seen, and experienced for yourself and for artists in the collective? Obviously, it's great that you have a group, a band to kind of fight against the way things are, but why is there still a fight? What's still keeping people out of these opportunities, do you think?
You know what? I wish I knew, because I think this is so insane to me that you still see lineups where there's not a single woman on there at all, or maybe like one, and then it's really often like the opening slot, or you have two women, but then you give them a B2B slot, and all of the other slots are just like men on their own, or like all the headliners are men. And it doesn't need to be that way. There's literally no reason why it should be that way. And I can't remember who said this, but I saw an interview with a male DJ some time ago, just like floating across my algorithm. And he was saying, if you're still booking male dominated lineups, you're just being lazy, because it's not like these talented FLINTA artists aren't out there. You're just not looking for them. And that means maybe you're not looking hard enough, or you're always looking in the same place. But that's kind of, I think, like a key responsibility of a programmer or a booker is to do the research. And there's literally no reason why that should still be happening, because I even mentioned this once to someone who invited me for a gig. And then they were like, yeah, well, you know, we would never book a woman just because they're women. They also have to be good. And I know that they didn't intend it to be insulting or like rude, but I kind of thought like you would never say that about a man. You would never say, oh, well, we're not just going to book him because he's a man. He also has to be good. Of course, any DJ that you book has to be good. That's kind of like your entry ticket to even be considered, is that you have to be decent at what you do. But if you think that you don't know enough women who are good enough, then you're not looking hard enough. Sorry, that was very passionate.
I think it's great to hear and to recognize. I wonder if I'm in a bit of an affected space, having spent a lot of my time with non-binary and queer clients. And the last festival I went to is Primavera, and Saturday at Primavera was all women and non-binary folk.
No.
You know, either side of it, Friday and Sunday show, and they were both mixed lineups. But it wasn't until maybe 11 o'clock in the evening, I was just like, the only men that have been on stage have been like the bassists. What's this about? You know? And I didn't have a worse night for it. I think it was the best night of the festival. So
yeah.
There is no reason for it to be male dominated. And so I appreciate that I am aligned with the problem, given that I am a cis man. It's not something that I guess I understand as being logical or reasonable, given the fact that, you know, we just enjoy music and we want to hear the best artists, not just people who look like me, you know?
And I think like maybe one thing that sort of does play into it a bit is that I also noticed this when I was starting to DJ, that men, this is like a complete generalization, so it doesn't apply to everyone, but it's just something that I have noticed relatively frequently. So in my head, this is definitely a bit of a thing, but I don't think it applies to like every man in the world, of course. Quite often they just have like a little bit more built-in confidence, or a little bit more sort of like belief that they can just do anything. And there was also like, you know, like these statistics, like men apply for jobs that they're only 80% qualified for, and like women only apply for stuff that they feel like they're 100% qualified for. It's like a similar train of thought where I, especially in the beginning, like would have never put myself forward for things where I wasn't like 100% sure I was able to do it, or that it was like within my comfort zone or within reach. And I saw that, for example, like a lot of the guys in my friend group, they were just DJing like for fun, you know, also, you know, not taking it seriously because it was just like a hobby thing, but they were technically very, very average, but they would just take any opportunity to like jump on the decks, play out at a house party, absolutely butcher a bunch of transitions and still be having a great time, you know, and no judgment, like it wasn't a serious setting, so that's totally fine. They were just having a laugh and enjoying it and sort of playing around, not afraid to like make mistakes. And then if that did happen, not even thinking about it. Whereas I would be at the same party thinking, oh, well, I mean, I would love to like play on the decks for a bit, but I'm really afraid that like people would judge me or laugh if I do something wrong. And yeah, that I think that kind of train of thought, and also maybe imposter syndrome, definitely plays into it, because when I speak to other female DJs, they also really often share that they had a lot of, or still have, imposter syndrome. So yeah, that probably plays into it quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I'm aware of those statistics and kind of have to laugh because I have been bitter or jealous of my mates for seemingly having opportunities that they just didn't seem to match up with, or that I felt that I was better qualified to do. And the only difference between me and them in the grand scheme was that they applied for it or they went for it.
Yeah.
You know? So then you have to turn it in on yourself and go, well, actually, if I'd gone for it, you know, it could have worked out, it might not have. And a lot of, you know, relationships, art, jobs, it's a numbers game, isn't it? That if you don't allow yourself to fail and you don't take the risk, if you don't shoot, you can't score, kind of thing. But I think an important point that you've made, and it's a point that's come up recently with Nicole of the Women's Wellbeing Club, is that we want to be speaking about arts and fitness and jobs from a position of equity, that everybody has the same access. You know, before we even talk about people being paid the same, or you know, kind of perks of jobs that we might think of as equality. We actually want everybody to be able to get onto the pitch in the first place. You know, that everybody should be allowed to play. And then from there, we figure out a system that works for people as they need it. And it's needs-based. And obviously that's idealistic. Obviously, you can't, there's no neat way to put that into legislature or into like practice without discussions, without big conversations that bring everybody in. So you've got stakeholders and representation. The thing is that I think people are both too scared to do the work, or that would take an amount of work to bring people together like that. And at the same time, if people just thought, well, you know what would I want in this situation? Can I get into the club? I can. Okay, cool. Am I allowed to play on the decks? No, I'm not. Why am I not allowed to play on the decks? Because I've got no experience. Okay, how do I get experience? Well, ideally, there'll be workshops run for people like me who are interested in it. Okay, cool. Who's running the workshops? Oh, it's just men at the moment. You know, maybe if I saw somebody like me doing it, I'll be more motivated then to go and do it. So it's just this thing of, I would like to see more people have the opportunity. I would like to see more people like them, you know, further ahead. So like you with Lawaai, how do we pronounce it, Ina, so I can get that right?
Yeah, it was pretty close. It's a Lawaai, and it's the Dutch word for noise. So that was the idea, to make some noise.
Love it. I feel like I butchered this point, but do you know where I'm coming from? Could you help me build it?
100%. I think this idea that you just mentioned around, like, if you see people like yourself doing something, that can take so much of this like it can really take down a lot of these barriers that you think, or like reasons why you think you can't do something. So seeing another female DJ or a producer was really killing it. And maybe like what I found really helpful as well was listening to podcasts with DJs that I really look up to. So for example, there was a really cool one on the Resident Advisor podcast with Shanti Celeste, who's a kind of a housey DJ from the UK. And she shared a lot about like how she got into music and the things that she was thinking about in the start, and, you know, thoughts that were holding her back, how she dealt with this, navigating the industry. And it kind of really makes it feel less scary when you can get a bit of a glimpse of like how someone's sort of slowly, it's almost never that someone just overnight shot to fame. Like if you dig into it, you really find these people have just been putting in the effort for a really long time, like slowly making their way to where they are. And I found that really inspiring and helpful to hear, like, okay, you just need to keep doing it. You need to be persistent, like always kind of try and like grow and develop and hone your skills and just not give up. And if you just do that consistently, I think the likelihood that it will lead to somewhere that makes you really excited is actually quite high.
What does practice look like to you, Ina? You know, particularly when you were starting out and you wanted to get your foot in the door in places around Amsterdam, to make sure that you were ready for it, or to do your best to be ready for it? What would you do?
Yeah, I think I don't know if other DJs had like a similar sort of evolution of like their skills or their technique or something, but for me from the beginning, what was always kind of there was a pretty good understanding of how to build energy or build a flow, and like kind of play around with that to storytell throughout, you know, whatever length of time you're playing for. So that was something that came quite naturally to me. But then the technical aspects of just learning how to make your mixes as smooth as possible, and the timing, and knowing how like to maybe blend a song or blend a transition in a different way depending on the two tracks that you're mixing with. That was something that it really took a long time to learn. And so that was really just a matter of just practicing at home all the time with the music I had. And just, yeah, in the beginning, the transitions were like kind of okay. But then you get slowly, as your skills get a little bit better, you get out of the sort of first phase, which is like, okay, I just need to get from song A to song B without like butchering how this sounds. So that was very like focused on like, okay, do the transition. And then the more and more that you do this, it gets easier. You train your ear a lot more. So a lot of things you'll start to do kind of subconsciously or based on intuition rather than thinking like, what do I need to do now? Because you just get used to it. And then now I think practicing for me looks a lot more, or it focuses a lot more on trying to find like more sort of creative ways to mix, and maybe doing kind of like more playful or like surprising things, and or yeah, using like very different tracks, and then finding like as a challenge, finding like, okay, well, how do I get from this to 170 BPM if I want to play some jungle afterwards? So it sort of goes a bit from really getting the basics down super well, and now it's really more about like, okay, how can I add like these fun little elements that make the mix more interesting, and that are maybe more unique to like me and my sound.
What would you put out as an example of a signature or a tag that people might recognize in your mixes?
I love a grime vocal, so that's something that I love to sprinkle in there here and then. That's obviously not an original concept at all, but I do notice that always goes down quite well. And yeah, I think also because of the music that I play. So I play a lot of bass and a lot of dubstep, and that's can quite often be music where you don't have a lot of vocals, but like very heavy percussion, lots of energy, and then it's kind of nice to sort of drop in something that's a bit more vocal. To really like, it can help wake people up a bit, and you can really see in the audience sometimes that like you drop in a track and then sort of everyone who was just going like this, they're all of a sudden like, whoa. And yeah, that's quite nice. And then I think anything with a breakbeat is very representative of my sound as well.
What does a breakbeat sound like?
Yeah, I think you just need to like Google it to listen, but it's basically like a specific like rhythm of the drums called the Amen break, because it's from the first time that it appeared was in a song called Amen Brother, and I think this was like in the 60s or something, and it was in more like rock music kind of area of genres, so not even related to electronic music, but it was like this very specific way that the drums sounded, which later ended up getting sampled by producers of electronic music. And then they realized like, if you speed that up and just loop it, you can either have kind of like a mid-tempo range breakbeat, or if you speed it up a lot, it becomes jungle music basically. And yeah, that's something that's very, very common across electronic music. I think especially the UK genres. Yeah, you can also have a breakbeat in I don't know, like a house track or other genres as well. So it doesn't have to be exclusive to jungle or something, but it sounds very nice.
Yeah, what you're describing is something that I'm in love with. So my granddad was a Motown DJ.
Mm.
This kind of awareness of music and breaks is something that I had whether I wanted it or not from a young age. And the break that you're describing, having been sampled in so many tracks, you had kind of Chicago house and hip hop music would take this break, and you would have your break dancers, your b-boys come in on these beats. So it's like literally both a break in the music that there's no vocal, but then break dancing, I think, as a moment in the song is my understanding of it as well. And
I love that. It sounds really cool.
Oh, I love this stuff. I've nerded out so much about it. I don't know if I told you about Freshly Sourced.
No.
I've got a playlist that's 4 days long, I think.
Oh my God, okay.
Is just sample or original track and then what it's sampled by.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've tried to do that, as much as possible, and some things kind of overlap. And there's a website called Who Sampled, which will give you all of the original breaks.
I love that website. So crazy to find out sometimes like where something actually came from.
Just love it. I could talk for hours just on this, and I love making playlists that have these little callbacks. So I really like the idea that you have your samples that you'll drop in, and it might not be the whole track. It might just be, like you say, the vocal, just to bridge things together. And jumping from, say, 140 to 170 and trying to figure out a way to do it, because of course something that DJs will think about is the tempo of tracks, the BPM, the beats per minute. And if you were to try and mix between 140 and 170, that will sound like an absolute train wreck, unless you can have that bit in between, or you can very surreptitiously move the tempos around.
Yeah, I actually have like a whole folder in my record box, which is like the software that every DJ uses to organize their music library and then format it to put it on the USB stick. So that's called a record box. And I have a whole folder in record box of tracks that are really helpful to make that kind of transition from like a 130, 140 BPM to 170. And they're kind of like the secret weapons that you can pull out if you need them. Very useful.
The last thing is to subscribe if you haven't already. That could be a massive sign to all those algorithms that you are interested in what fitness and thinking is all about. Phenomenon that I've read about and experienced, and I imagine you've experienced too, is the notion that people dancing in groups feel more related than either dancing by themselves or not dancing at all. There's also an effect of loud music on mood, and there's also an effect of tempo on mood. But the notion that if you listen to loud music and dance with other people, you feel better for it, kind of makes sense. If we think about percussive elements, not just in breakbeats, but from the dawn of time, we know that people have had drums and have danced around fires and been brought together by music, because there is something about it, whether it's divine, whether it's a godly thing, as the Greeks would have described it with the lyres and Hermes and Apollo fighting over the initial instruments in the cave, or it's just somebody noticed that something sounded good and played it again and again and again. And then suddenly you find yourself in this rhythm. Like that has been observed in people anecdotally and experimentally for a while. We feel better when we listen to loud music and dance together. But there's something else with music that I've only just come across, that loud music also works as an analgesic. Have you come across this?
What does analgesic mean?
So this is something that numbs the feeling of pain. So
what?
The most recent study that I've come across, I don't want to confuse things too much. It's important to me that what I say is grounded in some form of actual science. The name Durkheim came up when I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
So Durkheim observed euphoria in groups, and also that synchronized dancing elevates mood and pain thresholds. So the study here was that on a scale of 0 to 10, people would have reported a level of pain before and after listening to music. And it was found in this study that the perception of pain was reduced by 2 points on this scale of 0 to 10.
And was that physical pain or emotional pain?
That's a good question. What is pain? Pain as an experience is typically in the head rather than wherever it is in the body. So you could, for instance, have some form of trauma or emotional pain, but that could be manifested in, say, a numb hand or a limp or something like this. The idea of psychosomatic limps and illnesses is a thing. So people kind of make themselves sick, make themselves unable to do things because of what they're experiencing or what they're thinking, and that becomes ironed into the consciousness and can be really difficult for some people to break from. But I'm really interested in how people push, particularly for the physiques that they want or the strength goals that they have. And you'll notice that a lot of bodybuilders will have big noise cancelling headphones on in their sets. And I think whether they're conscious of it or not, it could be that loud music obviously helps to just drown things out, but could also be dulling their perception of pain, which allows them to push for more work.
Yeah, and I mean, I can totally see that. And there's also this whole element of if you have like, for example, energetic music, it can really help you push yourself. For example, while you're running or exercising in any other kind of way. So I think that is also scientifically linked. That, for example, upping the BPM on your music slightly can make you subconsciously run a little bit faster as well, because you probably would sort of end up accidentally or not running in tune with the music a little bit.
For sure. In lockdown, I was intensely aware of having music that I really liked, but I couldn't listen to as I was trying to run because it was too slow. So I really got into Sammy Verji, into Conductor, these kind of bassline and drum and bass artists, because they'll typically hang out at about 140 to 160 beats per minute. and running was just so much easier when I was listening to them than say to indie music or to house music, you know, because I actually felt that I needed that extra beat, you know.
Yeah, I had exactly the same with so I love drum and bass, but it's not something that I would listen to every day at home. And I do play it in my DJ sets, but also not all the time. But I remember so vividly, I always go boxing on Friday mornings. And there was, no, I'm not really a morning person in general. So this is something I'm always really proud of, like getting myself up in the morning to go there. And there was one specific time when whoever was on reception had just whacked on like a D&B playlist. And so for the entirety of this lesson, it was just like really, really nice drum and bass in the background. And it energized me so much. I really felt like I was pushing myself a lot more. It was also kind of like because it's so rhythmic, it really put you in like a sort of flow state where I kind of wasn't even thinking about, oh, I'm exercising and my muscles hurt, but you're just kind of like super focused. And the hour went by so fast. And sometimes I still think about that now. I'm like, that was a really good lesson.
Music makes a difference, and obviously is a thing that you gravitate towards from, is it Friday to Sunday that you give yourself to DJ?
Yeah. So I work in my day job from Monday to Thursday, and then Thursday night's the start of my weekend, which feels really nice. I can only recommend it to people. And then Fridays, I normally start out by boxing in the morning or doing some other kind of exercise, and then I'll spend, if I have a gig that weekend, I'll spend the day kind of preparing for that. Either on the laptop, like organizing music, maybe buying some new music, looking up what got released like during the week, or just practicing on the decks themselves. And then probably either Friday or Saturday night or both would be a gig. So then if I do have one of those coming up, a lot of the rest of my free time is also a bit sort of centered or orientated around, okay, what do I need to do, or how am I going to sort of structure my day to be best prepared for that? So I'll normally try to either get a little bit of a lie in or have like a nap in the afternoon so that I'm not tired. Exercising really helps to for me at least, especially in the beginning, it really helped to get a little bit of this like nervousness or like anxiety out, and just kind of like physically push yourself a bit and release a lot of sort of stress or pressure that way. Yeah. Sometimes on the weekends, I'm also not doing anything myself with music, but then my friends will play somewhere, or there's, just a night with some artists that I really like. And then I'll quite often also go out just to source new inspiration in the daytime, maybe go to a record shop, listen to the radio. Yeah, a lot of the weekend revolves around music, I would say.
How do you manage it, Ina? So obviously you described with exercise that music's a part of that. You describe it weekends, even if you're not DJing, that you'd go out for inspiration and music's a part of that. I'm just wondering in terms of, say, training and your physical fitness, because you'd have to have an amount of physical fitness and resilience to obviously work a full-time job, and then also to work, even if it feels like play, you know, to work at a bar, to work at a club, to do your set is an amount of work. You know, you're on your feet. There's an element of stress, pressure, performance anxiety. Your heart rate's elevated because the music is elevated. You know, what does this feel like? How do you manage it? Do you train for it in a way, or is it just that you are conscious of keeping your physical fitness up as well?
Yeah, I think it's quite funny because also from a lot of my friends who work as DJs or work in the nightlife in some kind of way, I think there's really two camps, and it's either people who are not really sporty at all, also really not into it, or people who are really like, I need this as part of my routine. And if I'm going to be out a lot at night and, around clubs or parties where you probably also drink alcohol, or obviously you don't have to, but like the sort of partying side of it as well. And then they really need to have the exercise and that structure to sort of stay sane and then keep a bit of a balance. I think for me personally, I'm sort of maybe a bit more in the second camp, and that I noticed that if I'm doing a little bit of exercise, or even, something like yoga, just to like clear your mind and feel good in your body without like pushing yourself super hard necessarily. It just makes me feel overall a lot better in my body. And then that also translates into feeling more comfortable, especially if you're going out to play somewhere new, you probably will still be a little bit nervous, but just maybe feeling like a little bit more centered and comfortable in yourself. I think that can help. But I definitely also go through phases where I'm maybe in the summer, or like in the warmer months where the weather's good and we have a bit more sunshine and brightness. I definitely feel like I'm a lot more active then, and just exercising because I enjoy it and because I like to, and not because I'm sort of pushing myself to do it. And then in the winter months, I become a little bit more of a hibernating creature. And then I just try to be kind of kind to myself and motivate myself to go to the gym by saying, afterwards, you can go to the sauna and the steam room, or doing something like yoga or yin yoga, which at least you're still out and moving your body, but you're maybe not forcing yourself to do X, Y, and Z.
Sense. I'm just wondering, as you become bigger, as you become more popular, you kind of climb up the billings. Typically, you're going to be playing later on in the day, maybe later into the night. How do you manage that? If you've got, relatively normal working hours Monday to Thursday, do you find that your routine is inverted? We talk about medical staff, we talk about firefighters, the noble professions working night shifts, and the toll that can have on people's bodies. How do you manage that if you're, playing a big slot and, you don't start until 11 or later? What's that experience like?
Yeah, I think that's like a really big thing that you sort of have to figure out how to do that if you're kind of serious about working in nightlife and doing that over a longer period of time. Because like you said, sort of as you kind of grow and establish yourself more, you'll get more gigs. So then it's not once a month, which it's probably fine to deal with like one sleepless night if it's, not a regular thing. But then if it's every weekend or every second weekend or multiple days during the week, it can really mess up with your rhythm. I'm really not a morning person at all. So even if I've had like a really good night of sleep, I'll still be a little bit grumpy and like take some time in the morning to sort of really get going. So that doesn't help, but it means that I'm very good at being a night owl. And I was always up late long before I started DJing. So I think the staying up late part came quite naturally to me, maybe also from going out, but also just that I sometimes feel really productive late at night when everyone's going to bed. I think all my uni papers were written between like midnight and 4 a.m.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, over time, I kind of noticed that the kind of switching up the rhythm like that really took its toll on, my overall like baseline level of how fit and energetic do I feel today. And then I just kind of for myself realized, if I know I'm going to have a night out where I'm maybe playing out of town, so it'll take me a while to get back, or I'm just playing a later slot, I just don't really make plans for anything before noon, or like even like the early afternoon of the next day, just so I don't feel guilty if I wake up late, or I don't put pressure on myself to sort of get up and just do stuff. So I think, kind of blocking out your time is really helpful. Being kind to yourself and like allowing yourself the rest. I think in the beginning, I just tried to slot in DJing in everything else that I was already doing. And then I realized you can't just keep adding things and like not taking anything out. Like that's not going to work. And then you're going to be super worn down and exhausted and not feeling super good. And, like also maybe not doing something or having to cancel on a friend because you're exhausted, and then you feel guilty because of that, and you feel like you're disappointing people. So I just kind of realized you can't do a full day of socializing and life admin and running errands and doing all of your things and then also be active and out the whole night. Like something will have to give. So I think I'm quite good at planning in like the lazy days, or at least like a lazy half day. That really helps. And then, yeah, I think I don't have to get up super early for my job during the week, because it's only a 15-minute commute, and I can also work from home. A lot of people on my teams, they only start working at 10 a.m. So, even if you would go to bed at 1 in the morning, like you would actually still have a decent amount of sleep. So I think the flexibility that I have from my day job also helps there a little bit.
Without any judgment on it, but just wanting to get an understanding from a perspective of somebody who is also active. I will be up at 6 tomorrow morning. I'll be up at 5:15 tomorrow morning.
So impressive.
And, I'll be going until 10 in the evening because I'm going to a pub quiz with my housemates. Like, I want to do all of that, but that's a long day. And I know that I will benefit from caffeine to get me through. And I will have a potent pre-workout, and I will have a Lidl protein coffee, and I might have a Monster. And I know how much caffeine I need. I know the stimulants that I need and the food that I need and the rest that I need in order to get through it. So I'll have to go to bed at about 9:30, 10, lights off, and I'll wake up at about 5:15. I actually shot up awake this morning. It's like, oh no, I've missed it. It's 6:20.
No way.
I realized that it was Monday, not Tuesday. We're all good. I used to open the gym on a Monday morning, so that was kind of the jump that I had. For people to have relatively normal lives and to stay up late as part of the culture of dancing and going out and all of that good stuff, it might be counterintuitive to think that all DJs have a certain predilection, that they're all wired on things, because that just wouldn't be good for mixing, for instance. Like, could you speak to some of this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people get into electronic music because they like going out, right? Like, that's, I think, quite normal that like most DJs also really love going on nights out, and maybe it just started with them partying, as many people do. When you're on like the other side of that, and you're the DJ and not, let's say, like a person on the dance floor, even though it is still a party and you also feel like you are at a party, but you just, for me at least, I experience it in a really different way. Because you do have a certain responsibility, right? You're getting paid. Someone's put like their trust in you and sort of chosen you from like all of the other DJs out there to help make their vision of this night come to life. And I think that's a really big responsibility that if you would go off and do loads of drugs or be super drunk or something, I think probably you're not going to do your best, but it could be super insulting, or it is insulting to the person running the night, because it just doesn't really show a lot of respect for the work that they've put in, but also the opportunity that you've been given. So for me, there's like a really clear distinction of when I go out on a night out just to party with my friends, like, I'll have some beers or some gin and tonics or whatever, and that's really fun. But when I'm DJing, if I'm going to celebrate, I'll do it afterwards, like when I'm done. And I think if people can DJ really well while they're drunk, that's amazing for them. I don't think I could ever do that. I can, even after like 2 beers, I feel myself getting a little bit sloppy. And I noticed that super early on. So then I also immediately realized, okay, if you want to take this seriously, then you have to just kind of also treat it a bit more seriously. And I mean, a DJ set is usually anywhere between 1 and 3 hours. So it's not hard not to like be drunk or drink during that time. You can just save that for afterwards, or like maybe towards the end of your set, I'll like have a drink because it went well and I'm enjoying myself. And that's, for me personally, alcohol or being wired or drunk is not really a part at all of what I would consider like the DJ experience. And I think it's a different kind of having fun. If you're the DJ, then your fun comes from like, you get to decide what music everyone at this party listens to, and that's like amazing. And you get to play your favorite music, and you get to dance with some space around you, and you get to like see people enjoying the music that you play, and that gives you so much excitement and like good feelings, and it makes you feel really good that you don't really need to have a beer at all. Like you could just not drink the whole night, and then even if you are going home late, then you'll probably still have a good night's sleep because it's not disrupted by like the alcohol in your system or whatever. So I think that's also kind of why it's maybe a bit easier to stay up late, because you're playing somewhere at a gig and then still have somewhat of a productive day the next day, because you don't have this like hangover tacked onto it as well.
There's a second half to that I want to ask you about. Fitness and Thinking is a podcast and newsletter centered on 6 pillars of fitness: the physical, mental, social, spiritual, emotional, and financial aspects of being. We have had an incredible first 6 months, but if we want to grow, we need those likes and comments and subscribe numbers to go up, and better yet, for you to share what you find interesting. When you're talking about storytelling and the tune selection, and the fun that you have is getting to dictate the flow of the dance floor, and maybe, you know, you'll have some people ask for ABBA, or maybe you'll have some people want to go in a different direction, and maybe you can humor them a little bit, kind of thinking about what the room needs. When you talk about your favorite tracks, what makes a good set list and what makes a good song?
Ooh, tricky question. For me, it depends so much on like the mood that I'm in or how I'm feeling. So also when I organize my music, I do it by emotions or feelings rather than by genres, let's say.
Okay.
And I definitely think that sometimes when you get booked for something, you really know in advance like what the vibe will be, or what kind of energy you're preparing for. And sometimes it's also that you don't know because you've never been there before. And sometimes it's that you think it's one way and then it ends up being just a different vibe on the night. So I think in terms of the track list, that's so different every time. But it's, for me, it's really important to kind of like play around a bit with building the energy and then also taking it away again and giving it back. Because I think you see that a lot nowadays with like these kind of TikTok DJs where it's just bangers, 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 and for the whole set. And you just need to sometimes also give people a break, you know, like especially if you sort of built up the intensity and the tempo over like 3 or 4 tracks. It's really nice afterwards just to give people also like a little bit of a breather and like take it down, and then you can always build it up again. So yeah, not being afraid of kind of also taking a little bit of the tempo and the energy away again. And for me personally, I also think if I've listened to a lot of music that's kind of just instrumental, so without any vocals, I really love dropping in a vocal here and there, because it somehow just adds like a very different element for me to the song, but also to the feeling. And that's what I noticed also quite often, the moments if it's like a very beautiful vocal or something a little bit more melodic after like quite a percussive run or something, it's really often like the vocals or like the little chorus bits where you see people like smiling or kind of closing their eyes and like really getting into it, or even like looking at their friend and like hugging their friend because it's a nice moment. So I think yeah, that's for me what I always really appreciate, is if you sort of don't overdo it too much into one direction, but yeah, mix it up a bit just for the overall experience. Maybe
the number of dance floors I've been on when LCD Sound System, All My Friends, has come on.
Yes.
And you see people hugging, and I've been hugged and I've been the hugger. It's just a lovely break. And as we were saying earlier, you know, maybe the lights come up a little bit and you're not being pummeled by bass lines. You just have this moment to breathe out. It is lovely. When you're in the booth, are you chasing a feeling? Are you wanting to feel a certain way? You know, you've already described the responsibility, but what do you go into it hoping to get out of it, would you say? Does it change based on mood as well, or is there a fixed thing that you want from DJ?
I don't know if I actually like think about it so specifically all the time. I think sometimes if it's a specific type of party, then I know exactly what I want people to feel. So, for example, my friend Kevin runs this really cool event series in Amsterdam called the Erotic Poetry Night. And it's like a very different type of DJing because it's not like a dance floor situation, but it's more like a musical sonic background for the night. And the rest of the night is all different kinds of performances. So not only poetry, but also like dancing or burlesque or whatever. But because it's all centered around like eroticism, that's really fun to channel into with music, because then you can sort of think, okay, like what kind of music would you play to like make people feel sexy or like put them in this kind of mindset to like go see erotic poetry. So then I have like a very specific idea and I'm like really channeling like a certain direction with where I want to go. And then maybe if it's more like a club night or a festival, it's maybe just that just like this really basic thing of like you just want people to have fun. I really like being able to surprise people a little bit. So that's just something that I've always admired in other artists, like seeing them play around with like super different genres or like sonic textures or different styles of music, and not being super predictable at all the time, and like maybe also sometimes making like a little bit more of a rogue choice or doing something unexpected that you didn't think works but it actually does. That's kind of what I think I always try to do. But I don't know if I sort of like go into a night and like always think about that strictly. Like sometimes you also just think, let's all have fun, and then that's like as simple as it is, really.
We have spoken about what can feel like a train wreck in a set. What feels like a good set though? When do you know you've done a good job?
When no one gets their phone out and people are just standing there and like the eyes closed is always a good indicator. People really dancing like with their full body, you know, like with the arms, with their hips, with their legs. Equally, sometimes, not everyone is an expressive dancer. So then maybe towards the back of the room, you'll see like a few rows of people who really are just kind of like head nodding, but you can sort of tell from the way that they're doing it that they're quite locked in. Yeah, I think just smiling faces as well, or kind of getting like when you get this feeling from the people there, that they're able to like lose themselves a little bit in the moment. That feels like a very good feeling.
We were talking a little bit earlier about how post-uni, or maybe because of uni, what we studied meant that we didn't find enjoyment in things. So you have a journalism qualification, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you went into a writing job, but wouldn't necessarily write for pleasure because of how much writing you were doing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it was just really, you're sitting every day at your laptop typing away, and then when you come home, you just don't want to do that anymore if you've written all day, which, yeah, I think it's still a bit of a shame that happened, but yeah.
So I definitely found that with reading. So I studied English Lit at Sheffield, and you'd go from, well, trying to read 3 books, 4 books a week. I don't think I ever managed that. I certainly didn't read Ulysses in a week as was expected of us, to not wanting to read for a good 6 months afterwards. And it's only maybe in my 30s I've been able to get back to a book or 2 every month and finding the time for that and finding the enjoyment for it. Given that music is there for your workouts, given that music is something that you'll explore on the weekend, given that music is something that you potentially get paid for as, the tune selector, the person who's responsible for contributing to the vibe of the party, if not the whole party. How do you keep it fresh? Do you ever have days where you just don't?
Yeah. And that was kind of like when I started DJing a lot more regularly, that sometimes I would just be at home and just be thinking like, I need silence right now. Like I just don't want anything. And that was quite new because up until that point, I think it was quite normal for me to just always have music playing in the background, or wherever I'm going or whatever I'm doing, I would always just listen to music while doing that. So now I notice it a bit more that sometimes silence also feels really good and kind of like a bit calming. Like it can help you, okay, it can sort of stop you from feeling like overstimulated all the time. But I think also maybe then I would listen to, if I am still going to listen to music, maybe just to different kinds. So more ambienty stuff, or like hip hop, for example. That's not really music that I play out, but I enjoy listening to a lot. So then I would just go gravitate more towards those genres, maybe. And podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I think there's definitely some part of me that just like loves listening to something all the time, but there need to be breaks from electronic music. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And when it comes to getting into DJing generally, we've already spoken about a misconception of DJs is that they're all wired or they're all drunk, but there will be professionals mixed in with that, because actually it could be better for your performance if you go in focused and you know what works for you, whether that's a beer, whether that's no alcohol, whether that's no caffeine, no stimulants, whatever it is for you will be different. But we shouldn't all assume that all DJs are as high as the sky. If though that were a concern, that might be off-putting to people who maybe don't drink at all, or who maybe don't go to clubs. How could people who wouldn't necessarily pitch themselves in those environments get into DJing, would you say?
Yeah, I think the actual experience of being a DJ, even if you are in a nightlife setting, is quite removed from these kind of elements that people might not really like. So just by definition of being in the DJ booth, you also most of the time have like quite a physical barrier between you and the people dancing. So for example, you don't really have to worry about being in a crowded space for people who struggle with that, or you would obviously have to wear ear protection, super important. But when you do that, you also are way less affected by like the loud noise. And normally in most venues, the sound system or the speakers are also angled at the audience. And then as a DJ, you just have some booth monitors for yourself. So I think it's also a lot less sort of intense than what people imagine it to be. And then there's also like this whole other idea that you don't need to DJ in nightclubs or at festivals. You can just DJ at home for yourself. You can DJ with your friends at friends' parties. You could DJ in bars. There are so many different ways that you could sort of do that in different types of settings, that I think regardless of what kind of person you are, what you like to do, like you would be able to find a way of doing that also fits in with those things that you like and don't like.
In Amsterdam, does the Lawaai Collective put events on for this, or would they link to spaces that people could go to?
Yes, yeah. So we try to do either like our own nights, which we don't do as regularly, but also like doing a sort of a takeover in a bar where we'll program the lineup for a night. And we also have a radio residency here in Amsterdam at RRFM. And then sometimes we do organize DJ workshops as well, where we help teach people how to DJ as well. Oh yeah, I just wrote down about like creativity in general, that I found in the beginning you're like super excited all the time, and then sometimes when you do something for longer, like even though it is really fun, it can just feel like a little bit of more of a chore to do. Or that if you're doing a lot of things and you're constantly preparing for the next thing, like it can also be a bit difficult to always conjure up new creativity and motivation from anywhere. That was something that I think I struggled with for a period of time. And then what really helped me was kind of, first of all, just allowing myself to not be creative, and like just realizing you can't always have this endless fountain of new ideas coming in all the time. and sort of accepting that, and then just waiting for like the next wave of creativity and motivation to come in. That was really helpful. And then I think also I almost like forgot that you have to also make new experiences to have more new creative input. So there was quite a long time where I had gigs so regularly on the weekends that if I didn't have one, I was really happy with having a weekend off. And then I just wanted to stay at home with my boyfriend or with my sister and my friends and, you know, do everything but think about music. But then after a while, I really felt like a creative sort of lull, and I didn't understand why at all. And I was always like digging around looking for music online, but what was missing was that I was not really going out into these nightlife spaces or spaces where you experience or listen to music just as like a participant, you know, just as a person who's there to take it all in. And that was, I think, what really kind of stunted my creativity for a while, that I wasn't just going out exploring, getting new ideas from places. And then I kind of realized, okay, the weekends off and the chill time is also super important, but maybe also not being too removed from nightlife in general. So just going to random things just to check them out and just letting yourself be surprised. And that really helped me like get my spark back. So yeah, that was something that I think what I wanted to share, because people can quite often get into these difficult spots with creativity, and that really helped me.
It's exactly this in relationships when they can kind of feel like they're not going anywhere. And I think it's the same in fitness. So very specifically last year, I found running and committed to running because my clients ran. And I never saw myself as that. My dad was a marathon runner, but I'm a bit heavier than my dad was at my age. I used to get shin splints. It just wasn't for me. But actually, the more I did of it, the more I enjoyed it. And when I realized I could run and also lift weights, I had a new love for the weights again. And I would never have called myself a spin guy at all. But, you know, tomorrow morning I will be doing a spin class. And because of the music and because of the cardio that I built through the running, yeah, I absolutely love it. So now I can go back into the gym, having been like, I think I found running because I was bored of the gym in part. So it wasn't just my clients, it's that I needed something to be different. And because of that experience last year, I'm not running anymore. I went to a run club, and that was the first bit of organized running that I've done since October, I think. And it was good. And I had the base to do it because I'd done it. But that base has now meant that I can do spin. And all of a sudden, spin's an exciting thing for me, you know? So I think when you talk about still doing the thing, but doing it from a different angle is really important. I tell people that they shouldn't be spending all the time in the gym. People who spend 7 days a week in the gym are going to burn out so quickly if it's not their job. And I think even professional athletes would benefit from being out at the gym. And it's not that you necessarily stop. It's that if you're a runner, you walk or you go for a swim, you know, that you do something that is still active, but it's not the thing that you do.
Yeah.
So,
or like hiking, or just looking at it from more of an activity, having fun kind of way.
Yeah, 100%. We don't always have to achieve. And I think we're so, particularly in the West, like pummeled with this idea of productivity that even our rest has to be productive. You know?
Preach. I really noticed that I enjoy everything that I'm doing a lot more since I stopped feeling like I have to be switched on all the time, and just allowing breaks, and kind of, if I feel I'm not motivated, I'm not enjoying this, then just saying, okay, you don't have to do it today. You know, like kind of looking at your to-do list and thinking, who's going to die if I don't do any of this tomorrow? No one. Okay, so I'm doing it the day after tomorrow. Like that can feel so liberating. And then everything else sort of becomes easier and more fun when you take the self-imposed pressure out of it.
100%. I have spent years learning this lesson. I've kept Saturdays free for the past 4 years, I think. Like deliberately no work on a Saturday because I was managing a corporate job, and then Friday and Sunday I was doing my coaching online. And when the corporate job finished, I was pushed. They ran out of money. I jumped into the coaching. that kind of transition, because I'd built in that practice of keeping Saturday free, it always meant that at least on Saturday I wasn't working, but I still put these ridiculous impositions on it. Like I had to read a book on a Saturday, or I had to do all of my cooking, or all of my, like the Saturday that should have been the day to do nothing suddenly became filled with everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't restful. Whereas this Saturday, I think, I don't want to say finally, I think I have learned a lesson sooner than this, but this Saturday, I woke up with the sun at about 10 to 8, just filtering in through the curtains. You could see the diffused blue and the diffused orange. And I didn't rush to get up, I just allowed myself to wake up with natural light. And it was one of the most content feelings that I've had in a while. And what did I do with the rest of the day? I just went for a walk on the Trent and cooked a little bit. And I spoke with my dad. I didn't plan any of that. It was moving kind of with the flow of time rather than trying to make it something that it wasn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then also you probably realized that like that was such a nice day, and the perfect day doesn't have to be being super productive or doing all of the things that you think need to be there, but just like being and enjoying that. I think that's always, I feel exactly the same way. And I really think people need to be less strict about like the fact that when you wake up, you have to leave bed straight away. I love that you laid in bed and enjoyed your morning sunrise there. And I also love just being in bed with like a coffee in the morning for like, if I have time, like between half an hour and an hour, and just kind of chilling and thinking and planning stuff a bit out in my head, and not feeling like this immediate urge to like jump up and like go into the shower and rush to like start the day.
Yeah. I almost felt guilty when my mates asked how the day went. It was just like, I was going to do this, and then I was just like, no, actually I had a really nice day. You know? And it's all right to allow the check boxes to remain unchecked sometimes.
100% agree.
Yeah. All right, where should people go from here? Have you got links for people maybe wanting to get into DJing, links to your work? What would you like to send people to?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably the easiest way is on Instagram at Ina Labrilina. And the DJ collective Lawaai is at lawaai.collective, also very easy to find. I think for women or trans and non-binary folks who are interested into getting into music, probably one of the best resources that I've found is an online platform called Saffron. I think their website is saffron.co.uk maybe, or Saffron Music. If you Google it, it will show up, and they do a lot of online workshops for DJing, music production, and then also other aspects of the music industry like PR or running nights. And that's a really, really good resource available to anyone. And the workshops are on Zoom, so you can join from anywhere.
Amazing. And what's coming up for you? When's your next gig, if people were interested in seeing what you get up to?
Yeah, I think the next big one would be on the 7th of March, which I'm co-organizing with some friends. We're throwing a party for International Women's Day, which is on the 8th of March. And we're going to do a dubstep night, only female DJs, and we'll have a panel talk at the start as well. And it'll be a fundraiser as well for a women's rights organization. And that will be at Noordspace in Amsterdam on the 7th of March.
Amazing. We'll drop all the links in the description so people can follow them in their own time.
I really enjoyed our chat. Thanks for having me.
As a separate comment, but also related, when I was in year 7, so I was 11 years old at school, we had to do like music performance. And Mr. Busby said that I sang every note perfectly of Oasis Wonderwall, but that I was 3 octaves too high.
What?
I was like, you're a music teacher. Do you know what 3 octaves too high sounds like? And he pitch shifted it, Ina. And honestly, it was Alvin and the Chipmunks. I was like, no, Mr. Busby, I do not sound like that. I appreciate that I'm an 11-year-old boy and I've not hit puberty, but don't do that to me. That's doing me dirty, Mr. Busby.